Hello and welcome to the Parker Files, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Hot Toys Rescue MMS 538 D32. This figure is the armor Pepper Potts wore in the movie Avengers Endgame. If you're new to the channel, there'll be more Marvel 6-scale figures and diorama reviews coming your way, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss those. And if you are a subscriber, thank you for stopping by once again and your ongoing support of the Parker Files. For the packaging, Hot Toys have done a really nice job keeping the continuity of the Endgame line and still maintaining individual branding around each character. And while this artwork is in line with that of its predecessors, what separates this box art from the others in the line is the slip sleeve style box and the subtle metallic finish that they've added to the box that shimmers and reflects the light in certain angles. Due to this style of box, we don't get the outer side cutaways like we did on the other figures in the line that reveal both the Avengers logo and individual symbols, but they're still present on the top and bottom corners in a nice silver reflective print. What I like about this style of box is the Arc Reactor and Avengers logo indentations on the side of the charcoal styrofoam. It's a subtle touch, but a nice one. I love how Hot Toys incorporated the Avengers logo and some spacey layering into the image of Miss Potts, and how that wraps around from the front to the side of the box where we see the name Rescue and the details of this release. As with all the releases from this line, the graphic arts department tries to connect the coloring of the artwork to the character itself, and more often than not they hit a home run. But in this case, while the image of Rescue herself looks fantastic, the colors chosen don't really reflect an accurate connection to the figure. The use of blues, silver, and darker grays are a nice combination, but the absence of gold, specifically on Rescue's faceplate, is glaring. The back incorporates more of the galaxy layering we've gotten on all the Endgame releases, but this time with Rescue color branding, and I really like the look of it. As always, we also get the credits to the cast and crew who bring Rescue to our shelves. Pulling the box out of the sleeve, we get a full look at the styrofoam box with Rescue recessed into it. This type of box and the materials used, like the materials used in the figure itself, are details that set Hot Toys apart from other companies, and Rescue, like other die-cast releases, apart from other figures. Alright, enough about the packaging, let's open it up and see what's inside. Here we have Rescue out of the box, and I have to say, this figure is stunning and one I'm confident will be seen on my shelf for much longer than it was seen in Endgame. Not because it comes with a lot of accessories, which it doesn't. In fact, I don't see myself using any of the accessories Rescue comes with. But I love this figure because it's sleek and eye-catching at first glance, and it's an engineering monster after closer inspection. For such a slender silhouette, this figure has some weight to it, which leads me to believe there is a good amount of die cast here, and it's especially noticeable in the legs and feet area, which really help with posability, as we'll see a bit later in the video. The paint application on the Rescue armor is magnificent. It's gorgeous, it's metallic, it's glossy, and it has Tony Stark's fingerprints all over it. At first glance, it seems like a simplistic design, but after taking a closer look, this is actually, in my opinion, one of the finest engineered die-cast figures Hot Toys has ever done. There are some high highs to point out, along with some subtle details to put this release over the edge. The moment I pulled it out of the box, I was surprisingly excited and impressed, which doesn't always happen. So, first reactions, if you haven't guessed already, first reactions of the Rescue armor are high. Starting from the ground up, the boots, like the rest of the armor, are the perfect complement to the Mark 85. The color of blue used here in the paint app is stunning, and I love the look of these boots. I love the lines of the design throughout them and the use of silver as an accent. It sets the boots off really nicely, and it contrasts so well with the blue and gold in the legs. There are a couple of nicely engineered things to note, and we'll see them a bit later in the video. The first is the cap that goes over the foot where it meets the shin. This piece actually lifts up when you want to pose the feet more dynamically. I was surprised to see this move at first because it looks so seamless. The second thing to note is that the back heel also separates, again, aiding posability, and this, combined with the toe articulation, are features that are almost impossible to notice when in a static pose like this. The thighs are more of the regal metallic blue that looks stunning, along with a beautiful contrasting satin gold color with silver accents, and I can't help but gush over the detail here. The legs look sleek and feminine and yet have that perfect blend of strength and detail. The design and aesthetic used here are complemented perfectly by the engineering. There is a lot of die cast in the legs, which gives it a solid, sturdy base, and the ratchets in the knee bend are equally sturdy and hidden well by the paint app and design. At the top of each leg, there is a small arc reactor on either side. These are subtle and almost invisible, but what is more than noticeable to me is the gap, or should I say, the lack of gap where the legs meet the torso. This is almost completely removed, which is an engineering feat in and of itself, as it has been something that has turned me off many an Iron Man release. Hot Toys have outdone themselves on remedying this consistent complaint of mine. Similar to the legs, the paint application on the upper armor is stunning. The blue is vibrant and prominent, and the gold and silver accents are placed sparingly and used perfectly. The gold is that same satin finish used in the legs, and the silver is a combination of true silver and gunmetal, and all of these choices are perfect complements, and they complete the look beautifully. The main arc reactor in the center of her chest is smaller than the others seen in previous Iron Man releases. It's recessed nicely with a blue accent, and there is some nice visible detail seen through the glass, and I love how this looks. The front chest plate is removable should you want to pose it in a more revealing pose, and there is also a small flap under the arc reactor that moves front to back, which aids in dynamic posing. We'll take a closer look at this and some other engineering details a bit later in the video when we get into some different poses. For now, what I do want to point out in the back is the Rescue decal, along with one that identifies it as Mark 49. It's interesting to see this designation as it shows Tony created the suit after the Hulkbuster 2.0, which was Mark 48, and prior to the Mark 50, which was the first nanotech suit. This is important to note because this means this was the last armored suit that Tony created, and that is interesting as this one looks more complementary to the Mark 85 than the Mark 50. On the silver portion of the flaps towards the bottom, you see some more decal work. These say "Caution, Hot Exhaust." At the top of the shoulders, you see some red triangle decals pointing upwards, and on the arm gauntlets themselves towards the wrist, you see the Tony Stark Industries branding. These are some fine details to point out, but they are unique details to this suit, and they add a lot to the overall aesthetic. The arms, like the legs, are that perfect blend of sleek meets strength. The engineering in the biceps and shoulders are really well done, and we'll see more of that in a few moments, but I love the silhouette and lines used here, and combined with the paint application, like the rest of this armor, it's executed flawlessly. Even the elbow joint is hidden perfectly with the aesthetic and paint app. The gap in the armpit area is always a quick point of contention in previous die-cast releases, and I'm pleased to say that this is concealed really well from the front angle. The gap is noticeable from behind, but I wouldn't say it's unsightly. I love the look of the arm gauntlets. They're unique in design, and the contrast and the paint choices accentuate that uniqueness beautifully. Something else to note in this figure is the use and placement of the mini arc reactors in the design. You see two of them on her calves, shins, and the upper legs, as well as on the torso, upper rib, and shoulder areas, and as expected, there are also some on the helmet. Overall, the placement and size of these details are stunning in design and flawless in execution. As we zoom in to take a closer look at the helmet, I have to say once again how much I love the paint application on this figure. The colors are gorgeous and they complement each other so well. The blue is regal, vibrant, and metallic, the gold is elegant and satin, and then the gunmetal silver is a subtle complement that is used to perfection. The helmet design has futuristic elements to it like Tony's Mark 50 and 85, but it also has the simplicity of the earlier Marks as well. The lines are subtle and sleek, but yet we still get that modern flair. I'm not exactly sure how, but I can say that this helmet looks feminine, as it should, but it still screams Iron Man and Tony Stark. I can't get enough or say enough about the paintwork on this figure, but that said, I have one small gripe, and that is the lack of subtle pitting or worn damage on the helmet and the rest of the armor. Simply put, this paint app is almost too perfect for its own good. In terms of accessories, for such an expensive and long-awaited release, the Rescue armor doesn't come with a whole lot, and with the exception of a few hands and a fantastic head sculpt, The other two accessories, while they both look fantastic, one doesn't work for me because of application, and the other accessory is limited in terms of detail, and neither are ones I see myself using after this video. Here we have Rescue in a subtle pose, but using the backpack drones along with the blast effect. This is an extreme accessory combination, and while I don't love how Rescue looks in this pose, I use it to point out a few things. First up, before we get a closer look at the accessories themselves, I do want to point out that even with the sizable accessory attached, due to the die cast present in the legs, Rescue can still stand on her own without the stand, which for me at least is a huge accomplishment because I tend to only use stands if they're diorama stands or for figures in flight poses. And even though she's holding a sizable accessory, I had no concerns of her falling. That said, I did have concerns with the accessories falling. As you can see, the fingers slot into the hand imprints on the blast itself, and while they fit easily while the figure lays horizontal, I found it didn't stay on very well once I tried to stand the figure up vertically. The accessories aren't overly heavy in and of themselves, but I found it tough to get a natural looking arm extension where the blast didn't droop a bit. This is unfortunate as I think the combination of these two accessories looks fantastic together. I know these are toys, but I don't tend to gravitate to these type of effect pieces as they're hit and miss, and they often look a little too toy-like for such a high-end collectible. That said, this effect looks awesome. It's a stunning translucent blue, and I love how the depth of color ranges from the inner parts outward and how it fades at the end. It really brings a piece of plastic to life. Overall, the material is a softer plastic than many of its counterparts, though it has two side pieces that are more rigid that allow the drones to attach to it securely. The drones themselves come in two pieces, left and right, and like the lightning refocuser that came with the Mark 85, these drones look amazing. I just love the look of them. They're sculpted beautifully and painted intricately. Like the rest of the armor itself, the drones are predominantly blue, but they have the slightest gold and silver accents that, again, like the refocuser did with the Mark 85, these all work together to create a one-piece uniformed aesthetic. The paint detail of the lighter blue sections is meant to create the illusion that it is lit up, and that is my biggest issue with this beautiful accessory. It doesn't light up. Now that may not be an issue for many collectors, and depending on how you choose to display this figure, it may not be an issue for you. If you aren't one for utilizing the light up feature in your figures, you won't have an issue with the fact that this doesn't light up. But if you do use the light up feature on your figures, I think, like me, you'll be disappointed in this accessory's inability to light up as it will look off in relation to the look of the rest of the figure as a whole. The other gripe I have for this accessory is more of a concern than a complaint, and that's the translucent plastic joints that hold the pieces together. I'm thankful the joints allow for some front to back articulation, but the pieces of translucent plastic used here don't instill a lot of confidence that they can handle a lot of handling before they break. While these drones look amazing from a distance, these two concerns lead me to believe these drones will spend more time in the box than they will on my shelf. To further the point, here's Rescue in a fully dynamic flight pose, and gripes aside, I love how this looks. This calls back to the moment where she and Iron Man fight back to back, wreaking havoc on Thanos' army. I don't see myself posing Rescue like this long term, but I have to say, when I get this next to the Mark 85, I may change my mind. Taking a closer look, let's talk about some of the articulation shown here, which is made possible due to the phenomenal engineering that enhances this stunning armor. As mentioned earlier, the top plate of the foot lifts up and allows the foot to move up and down, and the heel also articulates out, which allows the boot itself to have a fairly wide range of movement. The same is true as we look at the knees, specifically the left knee. The armor separates in a way that allows full articulation in the knee joint itself, and what I love about this is how the armor still appears seamless, even though it's not. The gap is there, but it's camouflaged so well by the engineering that's gone into it, as well as the paint application after the fact. I also want to note the flaps at the hips that extend ever so slightly that aid in the lifelike articulation while maintaining a sleek silhouette. This is Hot Toys showing off once again, and I love and appreciate that they can and that they do. That sentiment continues as we take a look at the articulation in the upper body. The shoulder pads aren't spring-loaded, but they do separate individually due to a plastic joint. This is a bit of a regression in terms of engineering on Hot Toys' part, and it's shocking considering all the other advancements found with this release. But nevertheless, after raising the shoulder pad, you can pull the arm out, and there is a ball joint and swivel to allow for full range of control. Again, due to the design and paintwork, when the arm is put in a position like the one found in the left arm, the ball joint isn't awkward and unsightly. Instead, it has a seamless and natural look to it. Speaking of natural, something you may not even notice in this pose is found on the bicep of the left arm. The bicep actually articulates out, so depending on the pose, you can really control the amount of movement you want to achieve. I've used it subtly here, and on the positive side, I love the ability to have a wider range of motion in the arms for posing, and the ability to separate this piece certainly affords that. But what I don't like is that in certain angles, it's more pronounced and visible, unlike other areas in the figure. It's a tiny Ant-Man sized gripe, and I would gladly take the pro of this over the con, but nevertheless, I did want to point it out. Staying with the left arm, I want to quickly point out the hands. In the unboxing, it looked as though I had gotten two pairs of the same hands, but no, one set is static and the other is articulated. Both of these sculpts are nicely detailed, and though the hands are entirely blue, the definition comes in the arm gauntlets that extend down over the top of the hands. This is such an interesting design choice by Tony, and I love how it looks in 1/6 scale. You can see the Stark Industries logo just above where the gauntlet articulates out with the help of another plastic joint. The vents on these, combined with the contrasting blue and gold paint scheme and the knuckle indentations, bring this unique design element to life in brilliant accuracy. Moving to the back, we get a closer look at how the drones detach from the backpack in attack mode. With the vents open, you can see that it is the slightest piece of translucent plastic that slots into a seam in the back, which is then covered by a similar plate to the one that was there originally. The engineering that went into accommodating this is impressive, but the application of it is less than ideal due to the flimsy nature of the plastic itself. I can appreciate the thought of it being clear and the size being inconspicuous, but those positives don't instill confidence. This is wobbly and unstable, as you can see as the figure spins on the turntable, and while I'm sure it will be fine when left in a pose, my concern is the potential damage that could occur in posing her for that placement. As always, when it comes to Hot Toys, the head sculpt is what gets the praise or causes the biggest commotion in the collecting community, and my only issue with this sculpt is that we didn't get more of it. I was really hoping Hot Toys would drop a full updated head sculpt of Pepper Potts, in large part because the first one from the Iron Man 3 film is such a hot mess, but also so that we could get some poses with her and the long-awaited Battle Damage Mark 85 together. I, along with many a photographer, would love to recreate that scene where Pepper tells Tony that he can rest now. My fingers are still crossed that Hot Toys takes advantage of the work that went into this updated face sculpt and that we eventually get a new Pepper Potts figure. But setting aside that wish and taking a look at this sculpt in and of itself, I have to say, in my opinion, this is a beautiful portrait of Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. I've seen a lot of comments that have concluded otherwise, but for me, I see Miss Potts here. I think the paintwork is exceptional, the hair color is accurate as is the skin tone, and overall, I'm really happy with the likeness here. The faceplate is magnetized and has some nice tech detail underneath, and I love this classic look of the helmet detaching. I don't know how often I'll use this version of the helmet, but as for a rating of this Pepper Potts sculpt from the rescue armor, personally, I'd give this sculpt a 9 out of 10. Here we have Rescue in the classic Iron Man ground pound landing pose, but also mimicking that epic moment in Endgame where she arrives on the scene. It was such an awesome and unexpected moment in the film, and Hot Toys does that moment and the ability to recreate it justice with their incredible engineering. Once again, you can see that the knees, while fully articulated, appear somewhat seamless, and I love how that looks. Another thing to note is the full range of motion found at the hips, specifically the left hip. With the hip flaps open, the leg can extend down and out to get that much needed range of motion to accommodate this pose. The torso can swivel and move front to back, but it's the pull-out joint that allows you to separate the upper body even more to get a wider range of motion, which again is needed for a pose such as this one. Another detail which is easily overlooked but incredibly important for a pose like this is the engineering Hot Toys put into the neck. The neck is actually split into two pieces, front and back, and when you move the neck up and down, the two pieces that make up the neck actually move up and down to aid in that articulation. This is an impressive detail Hot Toys address with this figure, and it's almost invisible to the eye. The same goes for the flaps that are extended on the back here. The first 4 flaps open up, which is impressive to begin with, but then 2 more panels open up for a total of 6 articulated flaps. The detail work in the sculpt of each of these flaps, combined with a gorgeous metallic silver paint app, sets this look off beautifully. The details in this open backpack are unexpected, but welcomed, and the overall look in a pose like this really comes to life because Hot Toys went above and beyond. Out of all the characters in the MCU, there is no denying Iron Man is the centerpiece. But let's be honest, Tony Stark couldn't tie his shoes without Pepper Potts. He said so himself. He knew the first number of his social security number was 5, but he also knew he had and needed Pepper for the other 8. What I'm saying, if I'm saying anything at all, is numbers matter. But the real question is, was this rescue armor worth the 756 days it took from announcement to release for us to get it? Even though this armor was only seen for a few moments in a 1-hour fight scene, I'm here to make the case she was. And not only that, I think this rescue armor is one of the best die-cast figures Hot Toys have ever done. The paint app in this figure is stunning, the engineering that went into it is exceptional, and the suit as a whole is near flawless. Despite my issues with the accessories and the lack of a full head sculpt, this suit represents the culmination of Tony Stark's love of creating suits of armor and his intimate connection with Pepper Potts. This suit was not only for her, but it reflected how he saw her and who she was to him. The suit is named Rescue not just because of what it was used for, but because in many ways, that's who she was. Simply put, Pepper rescued him. Having this armor on my shelf helps tell Tony and Pepper's love story, not just the endgame story, and it's a beautiful story to tell. So, all in all, after looking at Miss Potts' rescue armor and everything she comes with, I'd rate this figure a 9.5 out of 10. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you want to stay tuned for more. If so, take a second and hit that subscribe button. There'll be more Marvel 6-scale figures and diorama reviews coming your way. Until then, stay safe and collect because you can.